Correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like my generation, or this like upper 20s generation, has now entered into the book club era where we're all in book clubs together, and rather than reading the books, we all get together and just drink wine and eat charcuterie and gossip with each other. In today's video, we're going to be talking about books that if you actually do decide to read them, they're pretty thought-provoking and have some good discussion points, and are also just some good books in general, but you don't have to read them. It's book club. You don't have to read the book. First book I have to talk to you about today is An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. This is a book about a young couple who, right after they get married, the husband gets committed for 12 years in jail for a crime he ended up not committing. I think this book not only talks about the glaring strain that has been placed upon them by the justice system, but it also talks about marriage as a whole and how it can be really difficult to overcome certain obstacles in a marriage. I think you could apply this to your real life in a lot more ways than just what is on the paper here. I think it's really easy to overlook sometimes what families go through when a member of that family gets incarcerated, especially for something that was wrongly done to them. And I think this could provoke a lot of discussion surrounding that. And also, it's not a very big book. It's only like 300 pages, so I feel like this is a really great read. It's very quick and it has a lot to talk about. Great book. Really loved it. I would definitely recommend this. I also think this was on Obama's best books of like 2018 or whenever this came out. Not only am I recommending it, but Obama's recommending it, so you can trust me. The next book I have to talk about here is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. Keep trying to say Honeymoon. It's Honeyman, okay? It's by Gail Honeyman. This is a book about Eleanor. Eleanor is a young woman living, I believe, in London, and she lives a very plain and simple life. On the outside, it may not seem like she is struggling with some things that are going on in her life, and she may put on a front that her life is completely fine, but there's layers that are deeper to the surface that you notice throughout reading this book. Eleanor ends up forming a relationship, not a romantic relationship, more of just a friendship with a guy who she works with named Raymond, and they end up encountering an elderly man who they end up saving from a fall, and it's kind of about the three of them finding connection. I remember when I read this book, I really wanted to discuss it with other people because I thought there were themes that were way deeper than on the surface level of the book. I think that this book would be a great book for discussion. I think it talks a lot about mental health, and it talks a lot about what are we doing in our own lives as young 20-somethings, trying to like figure out what we're doing with our life and where are we going with our life. I really did enjoy this book. I definitely saw some reflections into my own life, but at the same time, I think it gave me a lot to think about in terms of mental health in general. I feel like as a younger millennial generation, people of our generation are very open to talking about mental health, and I think this book would give a really great segue into discussing that with your book club. If you wanted to discuss that, of course you don't have to, but I'm just saying it's there if you want it. Kind of going off the same vibes of like trying to figure out what you're doing with your life, I have The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This is a very famous novel, and I'm surprised that it's not talked about more on BookTube. This is a book about a young man who is making a journey from Spain to the deserts of Egypt. He is told that there is this treasure in the pyramids of Egypt and he has to go find it. Along the way, he meets an alchemist, or like this king or something like that, who guides him in the right direction. And he ends up finding a lot more to himself through this journey, personally and emotionally than he expected to, rather than just the material treasure at the end of the journey. If you are in that kind of era of what am I doing with my life, I have absolutely no idea, just read this book. I think this will make you feel a little bit seen. I think this book is a great book to discuss with other people too, because it opens up the doors to talk about what am I doing with my life. If you've ever been in a book club, you end up having these discussions all the time. I think this book could spark a lot of discussion about where you want to take your own life and where your friends are taking their lives and what are we actually looking for. It's a great book for young 20-somethings to read, so I would definitely recommend this. All right, getting a little deeper here. The next book I have is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes. This is a really sad book. Okay, it's like really sad. But I remember, same thing with Eleanor Oliphant, I remember reading this and I was like, I need to discuss this with someone. Like, the themes of this book are just wow. So this book is about a man named Charlie, and Charlie was born with a severely low IQ. He is placed into this experiment, which has been successful on a rat before named Algernon. They're attempting this experiment on Charlie to try and raise his IQ to hopefully overcome the mental handicap that he has. They've done all this experiment experiments on this rat named Algernon before they did this experiment on Charlie. And all of a sudden, once Algernon starts becoming really, really smart, he deteriorates very quickly. The question is that gonna happen to Charlie as well? You're following Charlie from his perspective in his diary. So you're reading his diary entries as he's going through this experiment. And he's kind of talking about his time in the experiment as well as Algernon's as well. This is a really hard book to read. I'm not talking like okay, I've read really hard books before, right? Like I've read like A Little Life. This is nothing compared to that. I think this would be a really great book to discuss with a group in terms of talking about mental disability as a whole, also experimentation, like what are the ethics behind that? This is a more modern classic book, so I'm sure you can find a bunch of book club questions for this, but I really, really liked this, and this is a book that has stuck with me for a long time. Also, this I think this won like some prize or something, so it's worth it. It's really good. Next book I have here is The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I loved this book. This is an incredible, incredible novel. So The Vanishing Half is about two twin sisters who are both born with very, very light colored skin that they can either pass for black or white. And each twin sister ends up taking one of those different routes. So one ends up into a black community and one ends up into a white community. And it kind of discusses the differences that those sisters end up going through as two people who have completely formed into different social circumstances. This is set in like the 60s, right when like the civil rights era was happening. So this book has a lot of themes of racial discussion as a whole. I think this book provokes a lot of discussion about race and what it means to be black or white in our world today and in our world in the past as well. The prose is great. Britt Bennett is a wonderful author. Also, again, one of the books on Barack Obama's list, like, just saying. This was definitely one of my favorite books of 2020, and I really, really would recommend it. This would be a fantastic pick for a book club if you haven't read it yet. So two memoirs that I want to talk about really quick. The first one is In the Dream House by Carmen Maria Machado. This is a book about Carmen Maria's past relationship with an abusive ex-partner. She is a lesbian woman, and it is talking about the abuse that she went through with this woman. This is not something that you hear about every day. Normally in our society, if we talk about domestic abuse in a relationship, it is typically between a heterosexual couple. And so this really offers a completely different perspective. The writing itself is not written in chapters. It's almost like there are certain sections which are much longer. There are certain sections that are just sentences. There's probably 50 different sections in this entire book, and each of them tells a small, short snippet of this relationship. That is a very intentional way that she has written it. She's thinking back on her relationship, and it's almost just coming back in little snippets. I think that there is a lot to discuss with this book. It was phenomenal. Her writing is so beautiful. Would really, really recommend it. Also, another one that's super short, so just give it a try. Next one I want to talk about is Educated. I feel like if you haven't read this in your book club, you are behind the times. You gotta read it, okay? Just put it on the list. Educated is about Tara Westover, who was a young girl growing up in the backwoods of Idaho. Her family believed that the end of the world was coming at the year 2000, and they were stockpiling and preparing for the end of the world. Her story is absolutely unreal, an incredible read. And this book has also been paralleled to In the Dream House as well. So if you enjoyed one, then you should try out the other in your book club. I really feel like you would like both of them. I've talked about Educated before, and I've raved about it. It's a very fast-paced moving memoir, also really, really deep, and the writing is just so great to read. So I would really highly recommend that as well. So the next book I have here is actually a YA novel. If you want to try a YA novel and want one that's not super, super YA, I would definitely recommend this. It's kind of like newer adult a little bit. It is The Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Booley. This is a debut novel. It came out last year. The cover is stunning. This is about a young woman named Donis. She's 18 years old, and she ended up having to defer college for a year to take care of her mother. She ends up befriending this guy named Jamie on her brother's hockey team, and something is a little bit questionable about Jamie. He is a really nice guy on the outside, but something seems to be going on behind the scenes. Donis actually ends up witnessing a murder and gets thrown into an FBI case, and she is trying to help the FBI and also discover what is really going on with her town. This book really highlights the modern modern Native Day experience. And it's also a little bit of a thriller, so the plot helps you keep going quite a bit. I think this book would be great for people who are looking for a little bit more of a plot moving type book, but also looking for a book with a little bit more depth to it. You know, maybe there are some people in your book club who enjoy thrillers more or something like that. I think you could definitely have this as a great book. Not only do you have that thriller aspect, but then you also have the aspect of being able to chat about some deeper issues at play here. What has society done to modern Native Americans as a whole, and how can we talk about Native American oppression, and what does that look like right now, and all that kind of stuff. I think that it's stuff that we, again, might not think about in our everyday lives. All of these books in this video are really great at provoking discussion and being very thought-provoking, but if you're looking for something a little bit more towards your reading taste, I definitely recommend watching this video here, which is going to talk to you more about books that I really love in every single genre for you to help you find your reading taste. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up so it can spread to more people, and then also make sure to subscribe if you want to join this community of book people. I hope you guys have a great night or day wherever you are. Bye!